Okay, I'm working on a few videos at the moment. None of them are going to be ready for this weekend, but I thought I'd try and get a video out for you guys anyway. So I'm going to do a quick one on this, our new history wall. So I'm not really into history as such, not academic history like you would study at school, or I don't seem to remember being into it when I was at school, but I'm really into kind of learning about old houses or old buildings, and kind of it just gives you a bit of a background about where you're living. So that's kind of the idea behind this wall behind me. I just wanted to kind of not lose the history of the house, and we were really lucky to be given a couple of things since we've been here, which kind of just helped to knit together all the different parts of the history of the house that we know. We kind of know some of the families from the deeds that we had when we bought the house, but images of the house were really hard to come across. We were really lucky that one of those images was left in the kitchen for us when we arrived. There was nothing in the house at all, but apart from this one framed photo. So I'll show you that now, and I'll show you what we've done with it. So this is the original photo, and it was in a pretty battered small frame with some cracked glass. We're trying to date it. The backboard for the photo had 1908, I think it was, stamped on it, but the house was either being built or not quite built at that point. So I think this is probably within the first 10-15 years of the house's sort of life. I'm going to show you the big one that I've restored, but this is the size of the photo, and it's got the original family who lived here outside, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. And I mentioned the deeds that we got loads. I mean, this house, with a house this age, especially if the paperwork and stuff's been looked after, you get quite a folder of paperwork, and this was one of those. I think this is the original deed. This is the original kind of transfer of the... I should probably lie this down on the floor. Let's do that. Okay, so this piece of paperwork here is like the original transfer of ownership of the land that the house is built on to the person who built the house. So that's at least how I gathered it. But I mean, look at this. This is like a piece of art in itself. All of this handwritten calligraphy and wax seals, and I think this piece has been added to it. Maybe, I don't know, but I mean, this is a serious piece of work. And it's kind of been annotated on in the past, and different solicitors have stamped their bits on there. And there's a couple of pieces like this, the really old paperwork. And they just live in the safe now, but I might try and copy one or a part of one just to put that up on this wall as well. It won't be anywhere near as big, but it will certainly be something to put up on the wall. And there's some sort of stamp there as well. Don't know if that's a postage stamp or part of it, but that's 1877. So this predates the house by about 30 years at least, but this is all part and parcel of that land being transferred. So our house used to be on about 15 acres of land. Now it's on about 1/4 of an acre, if that. And slowly kind of bits of the land are being sold off and houses built and that sort of thing. Anyway, so enough about that. This is what we've managed to collect so far. So actually one of the things that was in the house when we moved here was an old poster tube, and inside that was the original plans for the house, and that's the oldest thing that relates to the house that we've got. And this is actually the plans, the original plans that were sent off to the council for permission, signed and kind of dated for the house to be built. There are a couple of things that changed between the plans being drawn up and the house being built. A couple of extra bay windows were put on the house, and I think one of the walls is slightly different as well. So you'll have to excuse the light reflection, but it shows kind of the front elevation of the house. The side is where you can see the rooms. We could determine where the chimneys were in the house from this as well. It shows the original layout of the top floor, the attic, which we haven't really shown in the videos much yet. Middle floor is about the same, and the ground floor we could see where there was an old corridor and walls and stuff, which is quite interesting. And then the old outhouse, which is now, I think it was built slightly bigger than this, but also the garage was built onto that as well. So that's one of my favourite bits on this wall. I like that. Then down here we've got, it's not an old photo, not an old part of the house, but it's the photo that Joe and I and Eden were in when we first moved here, with some of the artefacts that we had in the house when our local newspaper did a little article on us. Up here, this is the day we moved in. I'll zoom in and show you that one. So you can see the whole front of the house was just covered in creeper and ivy, and you couldn't get to the windows, you couldn't see anything. And you can see the old shop front here, which had lay kind of derelict for a few years as well, and the house had been empty for several years. Another cool thing that happened last winter, a bloke just knocks on the door. He was dropping off his son at the Scouts or something, and just handed me this print. Actually, he handed me a really battered version of this print. It was a photocopy, but his dad was an artist and lived in a very similar but bit bigger old house at the bottom of the town, and had drawn the front of the house for the guy who used to live here, and drawn the front of the antique shop, which was kind of another chapter of this house's history. So I kind of scanned it in, touched it up a bit because it was really kind of ripped and creased, and reprinted it and framed it up. This is the photo that I showed you at the beginning. This one here. And I photographed that in the studio and did quite a lot of work, because although this looks like quite a smart photo, when you take a photo of it and you blow it up, you kind of pick out any of the imperfections. I didn't want it to look pristine, but I did want it to enlarge well. It's amazing the quality that you get in these old film, developed prints. The clarity in the image is amazing. It's still to this day. It's faded a little bit, so I did add a little bit of contrast, but not much. And I printed it on some water paper, kind of museum grade stock, so it's not shiny. It looks like an old print, and it's amazing. You know, this is a great thing to have. It shows the house as it was when the house was built. At the front here, there's a front lawn, which is obviously now a driveway. These guys here are playing croquet on the lawn, and now that's got two semi-detached houses on it. You can also see where this shop front has replaced the original bay window. There used to be a bay window upstairs and downstairs here, and that was taken out. Some steels were put in, and then this shop front was built. And lastly, right at the top here, this one is the first use of the shop, when it was actually a photography studio, believe it or not, back in kind of the 50s. So it was a fairly plain shop to start with, and it was only after we got here that we built that kind of old-fashioned type signage to kind of make it a little bit more period and match in with the rest of the house. And nearly all these frames are old ones that I've kind of collected from either antiques fairs or shops, or kind of car boot sales. Some of these are really nice old Victorian ones, the oak ones. A couple of these are kind of reproduction ones, which I've had made by our framer. And then I've just cut glass and mounts in some of them to fit the old frames, and then put new backs on them. And I've actually done a video on that. I love these old frames, and I collect as many as I can. I've used some for clients in the past, so I'll link to that video below as well, just showing you how I've reused them for other projects. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of the history of our house, and had a little look at our new history wall. So we're back to normal next week. We've got a couple more project videos coming out, and we'll see you next time. So thanks for watching, and remember, if you can, do it yourself.